So, if I can ask then, so what was the one idea that that your wife gave you? Because I mean, with Ghostflowers, there's so much going on. I mean, you could even take the monster out of the story, and you'd still have a great story. You could take certain aspects out of it, you still have a great story. But there's so much going on that all culminates into this fantastic, culmination of so many different ideas that came together really nicely. That congealed like vampire blood. It worked really well. So, what was the one idea that your wife gave you?
She came to me while okay, so this was 96, 1996. And forgive me, you're about to hear a train go by. We're right next to the train tracks.
Okay, no problem at all.
Okay.
Right on cue.
So 1996, one of the most popular, if not the most popular, hardcovers on the bestseller list for almost 2 years, if not more than 2 years, was Bridges of Madison County, Robert Waller.
Yes.
And it is a story about of two older people who have one night together, and that is it. It is not a happy ending. It is. The thing is, my wife and I, we read it, and for all the popularity of the book, the people who absolutely loved it, it is awfully written. It is a badly written, and she and I would personally, we'd make fun of it all the time. So I used to work at a newspaper. I was awake, shaving, just had my shower. My wife, her head appears in the doorway. I have an idea, and that's the first thing that told me something is wrong here. She has an idea. Usually, when she has an idea, it's let's get a new dog, or let's get a new cat, or I have found a new cat and we're adopting it. But this one was, hey, why don't you write us a really, really bad novel, The Vampires of Madison County? And I just looked at her. I said, that is an awful idea. Within 5 minutes, I knew who the characters were. I knew what would happen. I knew how it ended. I knew when it and where it took place. And it was just a goner at that point. I had to write it at that point. Now, it took me forever. That was 1996. This was in the era, I had an agent. This is in the era where you could still write 3 chapters and an outline and sell your book to publishers.
Right.
So
back in the day.
Yes, I wrote the opening. I wrote the opening chapters. I sent it off to my agent, and nothing happened. It may have been the era, but it didn't work for that particular for my particular submission. So that's fine. It came back. I ran with another idea that I got simultaneously, which I actually is a novel that I wrote and completed before Ghostflowers, and my agent is trying to sell it right now. That said, I stayed in the newspaper industry. Real life happens,
Sure.
You can't do a thing about it. So idea 1996, first 3 chapters 1996. Real life, I had a career in newspapers, which was over by 2012 when newspapers started, falling by the wayside. And I said 2013, I'm going to write it. And that's so I wrote it in 2013, 2014, and now here it is finally published. I tried, yes, going into it in 1996, I said, yeah, I'll write it badly. Let's see if I can just write something and let it get out there and sell and maybe do something.
Yeah.
And then as the more I got into it, the more I liked the characters, the more I liked the story. I love the antagonist too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I said, okay, I'm just going to write my heart out. And so instead of, sorry, dear, she's in the bedroom waiting for my mother-in-law to come, where it's her birthday. We're going to have a little party for her.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. And I wrote my heart out, and here it is. So I thank you for liking it, and I hope a lot of people like it.
Absolutely. Well, maybe that says something about my taste in books, or the fact that you just failed absolutely miserably at writing a bad book, because it wasn't. Sorry to break it to you, but it wasn't that
Trust me,
bad.
I can write bad. I can do that. That's not a
Now,
problem. I'll be glad to do that for you. My wife tells me that all the time. I do tend to overwrite, so I have to cut back. I really do.
would you say, because I know like that's the cool thing I like about this, and I love stories like this too, where you read about stories that
Right.
have taken so bloody long, where they're the culmination of such a long slog fest, whether life happens or you got a million rewrites. Like, how much do you and I see too that, like, on your website, you've actually got the first 50 pages, which I think is pretty awesome. So way to get us all back in that same time machine with you, when the first 50 pages counted whether or not you're going to sell or not.
Yeah.
How much does the published novel, does it represent, or does it mirror what those first 50 pages of the bad writing that you did originally? Or did you change it all so it's good?
The first 50 pages did change a little bit.
Okay.
But mostly, yes, I added, the writing did change. The writing evolved, just like,
Okay.
we all evolve. So the writing changed, but also the order of things changed. I love slow burns. One of my favorite movies is Close Encounters, and
Yeah.
it's a slow burn from the very beginning until Spielberg did the second version. I prefer the first. So I wrote Ghostflowers, and I sent it to an agent, trying to get an agent, and she says something has to happen within the first 50 pages. So I had already changed it enough to make it a little bit faster at the beginning instead of so slow.
Yeah.
So that at that point, I just started shifting things around, and part of the first chapter, the very opening pages, became part of chapter 6 or 7. I can't remember. I just had to
Sounds
put it
about
back.
right.
Yeah, just had to put it back so people would just get into the story real fast. And her advice was really good. Something has to happen to propel the plot within the first 50 pages.
Yeah.
And
So the gun's got to go off.
guns, exactly. And I wrote it, or rewrote it. 13 drafts total eventually. So that tells you how detailed I am.
Yeah.
But I wrote it and sent it to her, and she told me I nailed it, because I had, by page 48 and 49, 50, something was really happening to say shit's going down in Stonebridge, Virginia.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the fact too that in at the end of the book too, you actually give the story of the story, and you talk about some of those things, which I thought was super cool. I mean, I'm a bit of a, well, I'm not a bit of, I'm a complete nerd when it comes to that kind of stuff, like special features, bonuses, things
Right.
like that.
Oh, I love
And I've
that.
always felt that, oh yeah, absolutely. And there's no reason that, even though, of course, it's, you get the director's cut of a movie and you've got all the interviews, all the behind the scenes stuff, the shenanigans, what have you. There's no reason you can't have some of that stuff in a book. So I think it's really cool when, you get stuff like that where you basically get a bonus feature.
I love stuff
although
like
I've gotten a little bit better. Pardon me, sir?
No, I love stuff like that too, and that's
Yeah.
why my love for it propelled me to write that at the end, but to do several different things. Plus, as I was writing the book, I realized I'm going to put a real radio station in this story,
Which was really cool.
Yeah, and now I have no idea if people in where I have placed my fictional town of Stonebridge, Virginia, in Midwestern Virginia, not West Virginia, but Virginia in the Midwest part of it, some close to Roanoke, but in the mountains. And I don't know if they could have gotten WGH from Hampton, Newport News, Norfolk, which are on the coast. But I'm hoping that somebody, I'm a member of the WGH Facebook group. I'm hoping somebody on that group tells me that I screwed it up or if I got it right. I do know for a fact that even the antenna was so powerful, they could receive it in Jacksonville, Florida. They could receive the Jacksonville WGH in Jacksonville during the 70s. That's how powerful the signal was. So that's kind of intriguing. I hope I did them. I hope I did them right. But yeah, the fictional town of Stonebridge is an amalgam of several of where I lived. I grew up in Hampton, Virginia. It's mostly Hampton,
Yeah.
but the
Okay.
rural areas were from Caroline County, where I worked from 2009 to 2012 at the Caroline Progress, the newspaper there. Very small newspaper, but it was fun, and it had an important part. It had to do with people's lives in Caroline. It was their lifeline to what was going on, and it's a shame it's no longer there. But yeah, so I love addenda like that, and I really liked putting that
Definitely.
soundtrack together, the playlist too.
Yeah, it's cool. I've had a chance to talk to a couple of writers that have done the same thing, and it's pretty cool, and it's neat too because it gives it a bit of a rereadability as well. So I mean, like I haven't read or I haven't listened to the playlist myself yet,
Right.
but I would imagine be really cool to read certain sections or even the start of the book and with the playlist because I know you mentioned in the book in your bonus feature
Right.
that you hope that it should play along pretty much the same way at the average person's reading pace. So,
Well,
which
no,
for me is slow, so I might have to read faster.
yeah, I was going to say I think the songs will go through a little bit faster than reading pace, unless you're a really fast reader.
I
But
am
I
not.
did try to, yeah, every song that I mentioned, I tried to include. Um, I found out that I had made a couple of mistakes with songs. I wanted to include Brandy, but that didn't come out until the year after the story takes place. And I
Gotcha.
found out that Summer has my main character, Summer Moore, has different listening tastes than I do, and which I thought was incredible. I've never had a character have as much impact on me as she did because I would listen to a song and say, okay, I need to include this because that's what I heard on WGH
Yeah.
or or the FM station WNOR. But she'd come along and say, no, no, you're forgetting this by Janis Joplin. I didn't listen to Janis Joplin. I never listened to Janis Joplin, but she
Yeah.
did. And she told me that. So I had to include Janis Joplin. I had to include some other songs that I'd never heard of. And these are just accidental songs that I found online or reading other books, and they'd mention this. And if somebody is really interested in what's the music scene for 1971, that show on Apple Prime, the documentary series about it's called 1971, the year that music changed the world. It did. You got to watch that. It's really impactful, especially about the what was going on with American culture and social norms at that time. The story, I can't say that the story wrote itself. That's right, it writ itself. I can't say that it wrote itself, but it came along easier than any other story that I've ever written. And perhaps it's just because it was the setting was so familiar to me. It was like home.
Yeah.
But yeah, the book before that, the Enigma Club that my agent is trying to sell right now, was a beast to write. My general goal, I'm sorry, my general technique is to outline a book first, outline a novel first. And then if it goes off, then it goes off. That's fine. But at least I have that skeleton there that tells me what I'm going to write next. The Enigma Club would not let me do that. It would allow me to outline a little of the first chapter. So I would do that, and then I'd start writing. That chapter would be over, and suddenly there's chapter 2 in front of me. I could then outline chapter 2. So I don't know if there was some kind of a block. I don't know what was going on, but that's never happened to me before. Ghostflowers, however, flowed. It was like a torrent at times, and sometimes writing a story is like pulling teeth. I have had a story in my head, the novel that I'm going to write next, and I've already started it. But it's always evolving. I had the story, the first idea for it back in 1981, and suddenly yesterday I'm thinking about it, and something new comes to me. It says, "Oh, I've got to change that." So this is it's an evolutionary 40-year-old process for this one book, and I'm really tired of this. I, I like I would prefer to be able to sit down and get something done instead of it telling me 40 years later, "Oh, you fucked up. You got to do something else." So yeah,
Yeah.
Ghostflowers though was a charmer. It reeled me in. I don't know. I honestly don't know how. Sure, I wrote the book.